how do we make it easy for the client? It's not just experiences. Anyone can craft an experience. It's about a thoughtful experience.
Once again, like the big picture really matters, what our end goal is, and according to that, we want to choose our tools,
For me, my biggest asset also is the team, right? And it is the most challenging part, but it is also the most rewarding part.
What they do is they make my life easier as a developer, and also whoever will take it on. But for me to develop and to make changes and to handle, it's much, much easier.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the History Engineering Podcast. And as usual, we'll be talking about how we craft thoughtful experiences and perhaps giving you a tip or two on how you can do that as well. Today I got a friend and someone we've been working together. I don't know how many years we've been working together. Like 4 years? 5 years?
No, hardly 1 or 2 years.
No, I mean like we've known each other for a while, right? And
we
worked together.
That's 3 years.
We worked together like smaller, Like formally we worked together a lot longer, right? Anyway, sorry, let me introduce you. So Himanshu if you've seen us develop a website for anyone, Himanshu's been the brains behind it. And he's the one who's actually got it done pretty much for everything out there. And he is the go-to guy for, not just for us, I think for a lot of other people over time as well. And I could go on with a lot of things, but I mean, if you have anything to add about your experiences, that's fine. But I thought we talk about from the development perspective, because a lot of times when we talk about crafting the user experience part, we talk a lot about, design. We talk a lot about the stuff that people actually see, okay, I need to design this and all that. But when this is something that we've been trying to track as well ourselves, is design isn't just, okay, I've taken a piece of paper and I've taken a pen and I've just designed something. What you do is also you are designing a user experience, but it might not necessarily be the user experience that everyone is very aware of, right? It could be something as simple as the backend of a website. When I say simple, there's nothing simple about it, but that's kind of what you do as well. And a lot of people, and that flies under the radar for the most part. And so I thought we kind of highlight that because part of a holistic approach to crafting a good experience with a website is not just the job of a UX designer. It's also what a developer does, right? So what's it be like? I know since I know this was something you clarified as well. We've been working together formally, under NEM perhaps for a year and a half, but we kind of met under work circumstances years ago. And how has that been like for you? Have you seen a change in the way that maybe you've also looked at developing websites and changing the process? Or has it always been the same and you've always been like, okay, no, this is the experience part of it?
Oh, no. So, as you know, I was working with someone else when we first met, and you were supposed to train me on how to actually build the website. I mean, you did. And I did make a couple of websites over there, and those websites. And after we started working together, and when you properly trained me, these websites are completely different. And when I look back, I don't even want to go back to those websites. I don't want to log in there ever again because they're so badly made. So, it's definitely been a huge difference working there and formally working with you.
How has it changed your process though? Because I don't think it's just, I mean, like you said, I was supposed to train you and we did have a lot of discussions initially and conversations as well. So it's not that I've changed. Maybe I am, I don't know. But clearly the process for you has changed somewhere along the way, right? So what's that been like? Why this shift when you say that, okay, I don't want to log into those? What's changed?
So the biggest example would be, so my entire process has changed. And the biggest effect that it has had is if someone told me a small change with a website, it meant that I go throughout the website and wherever that change needs to be made, I make it, page by page, instance by instance. And now I just make it in one place, which is, the class for the technical term, and it makes that change everywhere. So it's that simple. So a small change would take a lot of time before, whereas now it's a one-click thing.
Right. So speaking of classes, I don't think it's just about like, okay, I make this change here and it changes everywhere else. I think you've also taken classes to the point where, okay, how does this function with something as simple as nomenclature, which is what we were talking about, right? Naming your classes. And it's not that simple that, okay, I've just handed a class, made changes, added the same class somewhere else, and, figured it out from there, right? So I think this was one thing that we were trying to figure out. How do you name your classes, right? Why is that so important though?
Right. So technically, you could name your class anything, but it goes back to how you've taught me to name things in a certain way. You introduced me to that framework, and it's a framework that most developers follow, which goes, you know, what is it? It's BEM, right?
Yeah, block and yeah, what?
Yeah. So it's supposed to be descriptive, like a footer, card, text. So
Hmm.
it should be descriptive. It should be such that if someone else takes over the website tomorrow and they look at the structure of it and the class name of it, it should describe what the class is styling.
Right. So it's essentially linking it to exactly what it is for, so that anyone who comes in can have a look at it and be like, oh, this makes sense. It's not like some abstract,
Yeah.
F-1 and F-2
Yeah.
or whatever
No.
like that. So I don't know if you've come across this, but have you come across like Webflow and client first methodology? But
No, I haven't.
okay, so it's the same thing, right? And my point was like a lot of people call them different things, like
Hmm.
BM or BEM or whatever you want to call it, which is block element modifier, is exactly the same as making it easy, not for the developer,
Hmm.
which the developer can handle it, right? It's making it
Right.
easy for the end user, which is your client, right? And I think that's something that I've been trying to learn, and
Oh
we've been
yeah.
trying to learn together is how do we make it easy for the client, right? Because I think initially it's always like, okay, I need to develop a website, let's get it done, and yeah, here you go, here's your website, kind of,
Yeah,
right?
but it's not that simple anymore, right? Now we are always focused on how we want to make it easier for whoever's
Hmm.
gonna handle the website after we hand it over for them. We're
Right.
designing for them.
Yeah, and I think even if we just discussed the design just before this call, even if we are handling it, we still follow the same process, the same
Oh,
methodology, right?
yes.
Because it's not just about us at the end of the day. And I think,
Hmm.
right, and getting ourselves out of that mindset is like, okay, this is easy for me. It might not be easy for me right now, but tomorrow it saves you a lot of time and try to train somebody else and trying to fit in
Yeah,
wherever and all of that. The two
definitely.
tools. So this, because you mentioned that you used to make changes based on instances across the website or pages. Do tools matter in that case, or can you just use anything to make it a good experience?
Tools make the biggest difference actually, especially in the space that we work in, which is WordPress. So we use page builders, and the tool that we use is Bricks, and this Bricks it encourages the use of classes. So classes are something that it's like a label, and once
Hmm.
you give something a label and you style the label in a certain way, and if you give that label to any other element, it would be styled that way. So if you just change the
Right.
text on the label, it just changes the style everywhere, and it encourages that behavior. So it's just easier for anyone to make changes and handle the website.
Now that you mentioned breaks, we'll have to get an affiliate link for breaks at some point so that we can link it in the description. Sorry. Um, and so this is one thing that I've been trying to figure out. Like, it's not just one tool, right? There are other tools that do it as well.
Hmm.
But what's that be like for you? Because I'm not just talking about the user experience. It also, our experience also matters, because if we are not in the right frame of mind, we aren't going to put in the best that we can, right? And we aren't going to do the best that we can as well. So how
Right.
does that? Because I know right now, if I tell you like, Himanshu, what builder do you want to use, and sometimes I give you that choice for whatever the
Yeah.
website is, you would jump to Bricks.
Yeah.
Get walk me through that process, because that's not something that everyone would jump to, because frankly it's not the
Right.
easiest thing to use. There is a learning
Hmm.
curve, right?
So whenever we make a website, 100 different things come up and 100 different changes come up. Okay. And the way I described earlier, doing it instance by instance is almost impossible. And that's just one example of the changes. It can be all sorts of changes. And
Hmm.
we want to build the website in such a way that it would be easier for us to make changes in the future, whether it be adding in a new service, changing some styles, changing the color scheme, for example. Any changes on the website should be easy for us. So
Right.
that makes just our workflow very efficient and good.
Yeah. So in one of our previous episodes with Deep, we were actually talking about how we call these digital homes sometimes. Yeah, that's a term that we kind of like to
Hmm.
use. But with a home, a physical home, you are stuck. You made a plan, you got the plan passed, you built the house, and then that's it. Right? You are
Hmm.
restricted by. But when it comes to the digital space, because things are changing so fast. Like bricks 2 years back wasn't what it is today. Right?
Yeah.
We were trying to learn it, experimenting with it, and all of that stuff. But today it's at a point where we're able to use it, and we're able to use it two things. One is what you said, which is it has to be scalable, right? Tomorrow, maybe the company that we're working with or the brand that we're working with, they change their entire service or service offering, or they have an entirely new vertical that they're trying to capture in the market or they're trying to enter, right? And versus that's one, but it's also the part about maintaining the website, right? Because we have maintained the websites of some of our clients and things like that. So we want to make our life easier as well, right?
Yeah.
If you use too many different tools, and I think this is one of the biggest drawbacks of all of this. It's a big advantage with WordPress, and it's also the biggest disadvantage of plugins. I think we've got when we started working together and started building websites. We used to use what was like 20 or something odd plugins or sometimes, and then now we've come down to whatever it was like 3 or 4, right?
Yeah.
Just to make life a little bit easier. So even from your perspective, you're making your experience a little bit better, right? But maybe because I don't know if people understand how plugins and stuff work, but maybe we can take it back to just what you said about you mentioned about I don't even want to log into those websites. That the initial one, and I'll say this about myself. And you recently rebuilt a website that I had made like many years ago for myself, like portfolio ones.
Right.
I don't know what that experience was like logging in for you. I'm sure it was a nightmare, but you did it, and yeah, I logged in over the weekend, and it just seemed so much cleaner, neater, nicer to handle now. I was like, yeah, I mean, we're trying to progress in our experience, and I had a good experience because you built it a certain way, right? So how do you go about like figuring that out? Because I think you always say, give me a day to figure the structure out, and then I'll come back to you with how we're supposed to do it. So you don't just jump into it. You kind of take your time to build the structures out, whether in your head or on a piece of paper, before you actually do it on the back end of the website, right? So why is that important, and how do you do it?
So this is one more thing I've learned from you, to understand what the big picture is, what the end goal is. It's not just building the design that has been given to me, which was my approach earlier. Now it's that, okay, we need to put these things up in this way, and they need to be functioning in a certain way, and it should be scalable for the future for us to handle. So I would understand all the services, basically the structure of the website, of what information is going to be put in and what needs to be shown on the front end in what manner. So it's not just building the design to get it the way it looks, but it's also to function properly, and so that it never breaks,
What do you mean by breaks?
So for example, if someone doesn't, so there's, so for a service, if one field is not filled in, and on the cards, for the service cards, there are all those multiple fields. So this is a small example, it's not a break, but if someone doesn't fill in the address, and on the front it'll just be a blank there, it'll be an address icon and a blank, so that's not an ideal scenario. So we want to make it foolproof, so that was what I meant.
So how do you, if you don't mind me asking, like digging a little bit deeper into that, because there are so many options, and you said we work primarily in WordPress, and sometimes you build websites in Webflow, and or we can build static ones as well, or we look at other tools. How do you go about choosing and saying that, okay, this tool is probably going to give my end users the best experience, perhaps? Because I think we had a discussion, was it last year sometime, where one of our clients who we currently manage, they looked at a different tool, and then they came back to us like, oh, for portfolios, this is really good, kind of. And I think we had a discussion on this as well. But then we were like, oh, we can build it in WordPress. Like we don't need a different tool. So how important is it to pick the right tool, or how do you go about picking the right tool? Because there's so many things out there. Everyone has a preference, right? Like we have a preference, and we're going to be biased based on our preference. But what's that like for you? Because you are someone who learns a lot faster, I think, than most other people that I know. So how do you go about picking the right tool?
Once again, like the big picture really matters, what our end goal is, and according to that, we want to choose our tools.
Right. So speaking of tools, I think definitely last year we implemented this new tool for feedback, right?
Oh.
And you said something about there are 100 different changes that come in. And I think we just launched a website last week, which had, I don't know, what was it, 60 something, very, very basic, like thousands of pages, right? So I don't know if I should name the tool, should I? Okay, it's called Tool, and so we use it essentially as a ticketing tool. So it's very easy for someone to go in and just pinpoint a particular element or something on the site, and then say, oh, this is not working, or this should be this way, or this text has to change, or so. how has that changed your workflow? Because for you, I think that was the biggest difference. For us, it's like, okay, I'm talking to the client anyway. I can, make a list of things, and that's what we used to do. We used to have text lists, and then send it across. What's that been like for you? Because that's part of your experience.
So the biggest difference this has had is when you make lists, there is a possibility of there being a communication gap between what the client told you, what you wrote down, and what I understand from what you wrote down. And so there have been instances where it you meant something else and I've done something else. And I mean that's horrible because I tell you that
Yeah.
okay, these things are addressed and actually something else has been done. So the use of Ruttle has eliminated this possibility, which is priceless. I mean, and secondly, we also reduce the hassle. Now you don't have to sit there making the list when you talk to the client, right? You can just tell the client to point them out. And the way Ruttle works, it makes our life easier, or rather, my life easier on a very day-to-day basis. So even our tools, the one we spoke about till now, what they do is they make my life easier as a
Yeah.
developer and also whoever will take it on. But for me to develop and to make changes and to handle, it's much easier.
Yeah,
So
I like
so
how you said, when you make the list, I was like, yeah, because I'm generally the person making the list. But you're absolutely right, and that's part of the process. Like, we talk a lot about the experience from the client side of things. Very importantly, and we forget this is that our experience also matters at the end of the day, because like you said, it's made your life a lot easier and a lot better. But for the client also, it's so much easier for them to just go to the website, to the staging site that we've set up, click on something and say, oh, this isn't working, rather than saying that, oh, I need to now make screenshots or send you a
yeah.
list of things, or let's get on a call. And I think with the way that we like to work with clients, we don't like calls. I don't like calls as much. Right now, in a different time zone, right now I'm getting calls at like 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. in the morning, which is absolutely horrible. But anyway, but it also changes their experience of it, and they appreciate the fact that, oh, I've done this, and I can be assured that this is going to be taken care of, right? And it helps track it for you as well. You just come back and be like, oh, all the tickets addressed, right? I love that message, because it's just be like, oh, this is done. Like, there was no confusion, nothing like that. Because initially, when we used to work with lists, it used to always be like, oh, can we get a call? Like, I didn't understand, like, this didn't make sense. And then I would try and rack my brains and be like, oh, what did they say? What was the context? And then it just makes, or sometimes just go back to the time, they will let me ask you again. And they get annoyed, right? I mean, it's not their job to repeat. It's our job to be clear. It's our job to provide clarity also, even from the development perspective. So I think you helped identify, work with these tools and all of that stuff. And that's something that we've been very clear on, is it's about, I mean, I'm going to throw the tagline again at you, but it's about crafting thoughtful experiences. And it's not just experiences. Anyone can craft an experience. It's about a thoughtful experience, right?
Right.
So,
but Daniel, here I can't take the credit because it's all you, man. Like, even a small plugin like Happy Files, which helps us to organize the files and images, it's revolutionary. Like, I want to use it on every website just for the sake of having that organization. It almost doesn't matter if someone else would look at it or not. I want to have that, and you've introduced these concepts to me. So it's you who are bringing in these small changes which really streamline the process. So the credit's all yours, man.
So I have this policy, right? Whenever there's a new tool or something, I always ask people, like, is this useful for you? And I listen. For the most part, I listen to people. But there are times I'm like, nah, bro, you don't know what you talk about. I'll do it anyway. And then eventually, everything is a bit of waste, right? But I don't know if you watched, have you watched Oppenheimer?
I have.
Yeah, so he recently won the Golden Globes, right? Yeah, something like that. So when he won Best Director, he went up and said, as directors, we can take all the credit, but we can't really take the credit because it's not us, it's the team. And I think that's the case. Like, you free up a lot of time there for me to go and look at what's out there and try and figure out how others are doing it. Because for me, my biggest asset also is the team, right? And it is the most challenging part, but it is also the most rewarding part. And so when I have time to go and talk to other agency owners and other developers and see how they are doing it, that kind of opens up a lot of possibilities. Like, oh, we could be doing it this way. Like, we are doing it this way. Or even vice versa for them, right? They come back and be like, oh, I didn't know you could do it this way, right? Like Riverside, I mean, we found Riverside because of the conversation with someone else. Very simple, right? Others, we were trying to. I mean, by default, like, one of our clients that we took over afterwards, initially, what were they using? Zoom calls, But then the recording and all of that stuff is so much better over here. Then we bring them over to this, right? Because there are solutions out there. Sometimes we just are lost in our own world.
We don't know.
Right?
We don't know.
And I think that comes out to your point of the big picture. We are lost in the weeds sometimes of what we're doing. We've lost sight of the bigger picture. I don't want to give away what else you're doing in life. That's up to you to decide to talk about. But I think this is a decent time to also maybe wrap this up, because we've been talking about the big picture and keeping in mind the client, and that's the experience we should be striving for. But also ensure that we have a good experience, right? There's no point if we are in a bad mood. There's no point working on something, or if that causes us to be in a bad mood. Like that's been the case last week for me. I just spoke to someone else and was like, yeah, we're letting go of this particular client. There is no point. There is no joy. But yeah, if you had anything else to add, we could probably end with that. And if you had tips for people who are listening to this, who might be in a similar position as you, or might be just starting out that journey, I don't know, or anything else in general that you wanted to add.
This concept, we spoke about this, but I think it works in the space that I work in, which is development. But I think it applies to life in general, which is, just make things easier for your future self. Just in general, doing things right now in a way that it will be easier for you to be productive in the future. It goes a very long way.
Yeah. So I come across this concept that, when I'm working at home, especially, my desk is cluttered. I mean, right now, so thank goodness people can't see what's on my left side. But I can leave it like that when I'm done at the end of the day. Or I can be like, okay, tomorrow morning I'm going to get up. That's a new me. Let me be kind to that person. And now let me tidy this up today. Right? And that just makes tomorrow morning when you wake up, you're like, oh, it's a cluttered desk. But you might not even realize it, right? But it's subconscious also. It's like a fresh space. It's a nice thing.
Yeah.
So coming to your point about that, it's a very, very valid thing. And so, yeah, if you're in a space in a tight spot, ensure, and if you think it's easy for you right now, ensure that you're making it easy for whoever is coming down the road. That could be you yourself, right?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
But thanks, Ivanshu, for doing this. I think the first time you've actually come on to do, I don't know, a podcast, I guess. But hopefully it won't be the last. We'll see. And yeah, so if anyone, you want us to talk about something specific to development, let us know in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, all of that stuff. National Media, It's Rendering Podcast. And if you're listening on Spotify, definitely go rate us. I think someone out of the many different, how many do we have? 9 ratings, something yesterday. Someone has given us a lower rating. So I don't know what that is. It could have been by mistake. But if you have, let us know what we can do better, and we'll try and do that. So thanks Ivanshu. Thanks for listening in, and thanks for tuning in.